Hey Cyrus, how are ya? Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thank you for making the time. How are you doing?
You know what? It's been a pretty incredible couple of days. Just one amazing speaker after the next, and I'm really looking forward to our session. I feel in amongst everything else that we've been learning, knowing how to resolve conflict in our personal relationships is so fundamental in being able to personalize this message of unity. So we're so
Yeah.
appreciative of your expertise. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm super grateful for you putting this on, Nicole. Just want to give you a few moments to take some credit, feel that, feel what you're creating. Right. Thank you. Thank you for doing your work and bringing your superpower too.
yeah, thank you. It's being responsive with the global climate like today is so important. I feel for leaders to really look at what's needed, and even if that's slightly off plan, to be responsive with that. And it's just been so beautiful to see 30 of some of the greatest minds in the world just be like, yeah, let's do this, let's have these conversations, let's give this value and this information at a time where misinformation is just rife and it's so difficult to find the truth. It's been a beautiful experience for me, even though it's been a lot to take on. I'm so proud of me and the members of my team that have been working on this, and all of the speakers as well.
Yeah, great. Hey,
Yeah,
just a question before we start. Is my background too bright? Is that like on your eyes a little bit straining?
I don't think anyone should ever apologize for how much their light is shining behind them. So
Okay.
I think we should just embrace that. It's beautiful. Are you in Bali at the moment?
Yeah, I am. I'm in like an epic eco resort that me and some friends, because it's so quiet here, we just rented a whole resort. So we're living in the lap of luxury for a few months until it reopens.
There are just so many epic people in Bali right now. It's and so many people have been calling in from Bali,
Yeah.
and it just looks the best. How's lockdown been there? Have you noticed it, other than the obviously the
Maybe I
quiet?
have a mask on occasionally if I go to the supermarket. And for a while there was a lockdown, but I don't know, last 4 months there's been, you occasionally have to stick a mask on. I mean, I was at a party with 300 people last night.
Hmm.
So it's not much of a lockdown.
That's
Bit of a lock in.
yeah. Sounds like a good time. That sounds like. All right, let's get into it. Are you ready? Are there things specifically that you would love to sort of preface before we jump into this conversation? Because I have a list of questions that I feel would be
I
so valuable.
Yeah, I think you should follow your curiosity because you are, what's the word, the representative of the person out there that wants to ask questions. And as much as I possibly humbly can, hopefully I can be the repository of a little bit of wisdom to share. And so, yeah, like whatever comes up around this subject of what is conflict, why do we have it with the ones we love, how do we get out of it, anything is good by me. I do have one question actually.
Please.
At the end, can I give out my WhatsApp number and offer anyone who's listening the chart? Because what I'm going to do is put all the stuff that we talk about down on some PDFs so people that can actually use it in their relationships. And I hate emails because you can't opt out. So I just want to offer my number, and if anyone wants to sign in, I'll put them in a group and share everything that we talk about and more.
Thank you for that generosity, Cyrus. We're really trying to make sure that all of this information is captured, broken down, and implementable. So that is so in alignment with what we're creating with the summit. And you've just saved my team and I needing to go through all of the gems in your talk and do that for all of the registrants. So we're deeply appreciative. We actually have a WhatsApp group with all participants. So what I could do is just add you into that WhatsApp group, and then everyone's connected to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that. And we can put it out on. Would you want us to put it out on Facebook? I feel like that's potentially going to get you absolutely swarmed with.
Probably not.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
that would be the other
I
way.
know,
That would be the way
I
of
know.
distributing it.
Yeah, no, like I'm just more curious to have the people that are actually listening in that feel impacted by the stuff but can't remember it, to have something that's really easily accessible. So everything I do, I gamify, because that's the way to have fun with these processes. And so they're little games that I offer to people that they can play at home with their loved ones, and at the same time as playing the game, kind of be reprogramming their nervous system to act in a way that's in accordance with what they want. But we can talk about all this stuff when we're on. Are we
Yeah,
on now?
we're on. Yeah, we're on.
All right.
I think that's actually an amazing place to start. You know, the idea, and it's been brought up a few different times from different perspectives, the fundamental nature of a human being. Firstly, is it geared towards resolution and harmony, or is it geared towards segregation? And what your views on that are from your experience?
So, from my experience, we are fundamentally controlled by our nervous system. And our nervous system, we live in this modern time, but our nervous system was built over millennia when we were hunter gatherers out in the forest. And so the way our nervous system works for our own safety is when it feels like there's the possibility of danger, rather than erring on the side of assuming it's not dangerous and having some gnarly animal bite your arm or your head off, it errs on the side of making sure that we are safe. And so that will be to freeze or to run away, or if it's a small enough wild animal or a loved one, perhaps fight. And so our nervous system's this amazing, beautiful thing that was created for our safety, and it works by flicking back through all its experiences of the past to figure out whether this particular situation may be dangerous. And that's great in a lot of situations, and in our personal relationships, when that starts to flip our trigger, it's not necessarily the best response. So we should be really grateful to our nervous systems. And at the same time, I want to say to everyone out there right now that when you're in conflict with your partner, it's not necessarily you in this present moment, but it's you and your past experiences, and we can call those traumas, coming together and clashing in a way that's doing its best, but not necessarily appropriate if you're sitting on the couch with your partner and suddenly your two nervous systems collide.
I think it's an important thing to understand, right? Like, one of the questions I get asked so much in my work is, one of the I guess assumptions that I bring to the table through Love Out Loud is all of us ultimately want to be loved, and want love, and that's something that we fundamentally are. I think it's a pretty safe assumption, but many of the resistance that comes up against me in assuming that is well, if we are love and that's what we want, then why do we act in the way that we do? And what I've discovered, to simplify it through my work, is having the awareness of what love would look like in a moment is one thing. The second thing is having the capacity to choose it. And I feel like that's where we really need to take responsibility for our nervous system, understand that if there's trauma present in our field, in our subconscious, in our bodies, is actually limiting our capacity. Sort of like, use the example of a partner. If you've had an argument with a partner and you know the right thing to do is to say sorry or to lean in and to soften in that situation, but for some reason we just can't in that moment. And I'd love, through your lens, to sort of explain what is happening there somatically, what's happening in relation to our nervous system, what's happening cognitively that is preventing us from actually taking the action that would be most true to ourselves in that moment.
Yeah, so there's this kind of idealistic view on the human being of exactly what you spoke about. And then there's the real practical version of the human being, which is, we're beautiful, but we have this thing called the human condition. And it has all these parts to it that somewhere in our recent past, we were kind of educated that are not okay, but they are part of the experience. And so for me, my work's more about like acknowledging that this is the human condition, and let's figure out how we're going to best navigate that. So in terms of like when you said that, you know, you're sitting there with your partner and you know what the right thing to do is, but you're having trouble doing that. There's these two distinctive parts of our nervous system. And one is this thing called the sympathetic nervous. Sorry, we just got a gardener coming through. So, love Harley. So there's these two distinctive parts of our nervous system, and one deals with our protection. It's called the sympathetic nervous system, and it's sympathetic to the situation we're in. And that when we're in that state, that switches off our capacity to be reasonable and loving and caring, because it's that old part of our nervous system that's trying to keep us safe. And it's programmed from those times when we were, as I said, hunter-gatherers. So there's this kind of energetic cycle that happens. And once we start approaching trigger, so each of us has a functional range. Some of us have a very big functional range if we've had a really nice childhood, a nice upbringing. People that have had a lot of trauma have a small functional range. And what's happening all the time is our nervous system's looking out and it's going danger, 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 safety, danger, safety. And if that sits within that range, that's fine. As soon as it starts to get to the extreme of that, it starts to have a physiological effect on our body. And it switches off the parts of our brain that deal with logic and reason and love and compassion, and switches on those muscles for running and for fighting, or shuts us down so that we can pretend to be dead so the animal might leave us alone. And so those responses are inherently programmed into us. When we're in a loving relationship, they're not necessarily appropriate things to do, but they're there. So what I like to teach people or to offer to my clients is this recognition of that's the way it is. So how do we best navigate that? So for instance, if you notice yourself becoming triggered, and this is a process of taking little steps. So in the beginning, it's hard to notice that you're getting triggered. But after a while, if you put your mind to it, you can start to see, oh yeah, I'm starting to feel like I'm bracing myself, or my breath's getting short, or my vision's tunneling down a little bit, or I'm leaning in and feeling my fists clenching. If you notice that happening, then what a really good thing to do is just to boom, I say hit the pause button or call a time out. So it's great to say, I would love to tell my partner in those moments that I love them, but I can't. Let's just assume that you can't for now. And rather than going down that route of, okay, I know where this goes. If we both start into this space of fighting with each other, I know what's going to happen. Let's press the pause button. Let's let that energy that's built up to the top of my functional range just have some time to dissipate. And then let's revisit what we were talking about. And the one thing I want to point out is that almost invariably in conflict in relationships that are close, conflict's actually connection wanting to happen. It's just our nervous systems are getting in the way of that. And that if we start to recognize these energetic cycles and just move away from them, then we can stay much more in this functional range where we have access to our logic and our reason and our love and compassion. And it's a bit like learning to walk. At first, you're going to fall over repeatedly, but that's okay because that's the way to learn.
Yeah. Do you see that many people get tripped up in that pattern of, okay, this is a decision I want to make. I don't have the capacity to make it, and then become self-critical, not able to forgive themselves. Therefore, there's just a spiral that begins to happen there. I feel like forgiveness, self-compassion is such a big part of that. But one thing I really want to dive into and explore is how is this playing out collectively? Because I think a psychological threshold that many people struggle to move beyond is the idea, the concept that many powerful leaders in the world are making the decisions they're making simply because they don't have access to a healthier nervous system, access to the ability to empathize more deeply, have a deeper state of compassion. It can be difficult to accept, especially when we have leaders up on a pedestal, we see their capabilities, to actually be able to hold a space of compassion for them and to recognize, well, fundamentally, they actually don't have the ability, capacity to right now. I want to explore this question from one thing I often think about is in the global climate today, we have leaders that are influencing billions of people, but where we came from, where we evolved from, what our nervous system was accustomed to for many, many centuries was a tribe. You know, you'd have tribal leaders and you were responsible for, say, a maximum of 50 to 100 people. What stress is this putting on leaders today? Like being accountable for so many people, the gravity of their decision making is so immense. I'd love to explore that through your lens.
Yeah, I kind of have the same, whether it's in the micro or whether it's in the macro. I kind of have this belief that until I as an individual, am able to be calm and loving and accepting of myself, then that same landscape that's on the inside is going to play out externally. And I think if from a nervous system point of view, it's programming. And so I don't know if you've had like spiritual yogi people on, but they talk about these quality of the samskara, these kind of grooves or patterns or loops in our consciousness that we get caught in. And I would suggest that most of our world leaders, unless they're very evolved, have become so, I mean, I can just watch it now when I'm watching, bless the people that are in the election at the moment. And it's like this binary thing where it's us against them. And that feels very tribal. And I think tribal times were great, but also the pitfall of looking back to tribal times is if you're in the tribe, you're welcome. And if you're not in the tribe, then you're a possible enemy. And I think that's actually the lens that I see is what's playing out now. That's the dynamic I kind of see. And it feels like that's the dynamic that a lot of the leaders of our countries right now are trying to put out there. And for me, it's actually about trying to remind people that we can have a difference of opinion, but it doesn't mean we have to be against each other. They're fundamentally different, but they seem to have been coupled now. And that coupling thing is very dangerous. It's like what happens in our psyche when, you know, we're small and we see a dog that barks and it scares us. So we then couple the thought of dog with danger. And what's happening out there now is I see that our leaders, the ones that at least have the microphone, a lot of them seem to be peddling this narrative that if we're not having the same opinion, then it means we're against each other. And that means danger. The other person becomes dangerous. And I see that playing out there. So actually, in my opinion, I was having this conversation with some friends last night. We don't really need 70-year-old people to be the leaders of our world. We need people in their 20s and 30s that haven't had that kind of level of programming and that have this, that they have a collective consciousness that's more appropriate to this consciousness that we're living in right now, and not bringing this old level of consciousness of us against each other into this present moment.
I think that's the operative word is consciousness, the capacity that someone's consciousness has to be in a position of leadership that is then influencing many, many people underneath them. You know, you mentioned earlier when you were introducing your work that it ultimately, this behavior of conflict defense is coming from a need to feel safe. It's triggered when you're not feeling safe. And in knowing what you know about human beings, how many leaders that are not making effective decisions or taking this position of opposition that I have to see the world in a binary way, how much do you feel that that is actually linked to their own absence of safety?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of their own absence of safety, their own subconscious, because we're all controlled by our subconscious. We maybe have consciousness, but it's our subconscious that's really in the background running those programs. And so I think that there's these two things going on. Firstly is absolutely that their nervous systems are so programmed to run in this loop that's telling them that story and that narrative that it's not safe because of these other people, and I can find safety by beating them or destroying them or putting them down. And then it's also the fact that they don't have an awareness that that's going on. It's like, you know, the fish not knowing that it's swimming in the ocean, not being able to see that the context that you're living in is not necessarily real. It's just a construct of your mind and your previous experiences. And are you open to the possibility of listening to somebody that has a different perspective? And it's that same thing. Are you politically open to somebody that may have a different perspective? You know, it's actually from all the different perspectives in life that we've come to the point of having this amazing collective wisdom. And now it seems like, at least on the surface, from what we're seeing in the media and social media, that we've forgotten that that's the truth. And actually that now it's about rooting in and holding on to one's opinion, because that's become our identity.
And that's really what it comes down to, right? A culture that has glorified the individual, that has put the individual on the highest pedestal and said your individuality, your identity is ultimately going to be what means you succeed or fail in life. And I'm sure you see this all the time in your work. How much is there an association of people being able to be fluid with their identity, let go of identity constructs that are no longer serving them, as a means to reconcile that cognitive dissonance, as opposed to rejecting, you know, the person in front of them or the situation in front of them that's challenging their belief systems?
So my work's predominantly with either corporates or individuals and couples that are having problems in their relationships. So they're much more...
The swing.
Yeah. So they're much more likely to be open to the fact that there is another way of being, because when they came together, they probably weren't in the same dynamic that they're in right now. And so there's definite openness. One of the first things I kind of say to people is, guys, thank you for being here. And I just want to say, it's not you, it's your nervous systems that are in conflict. And straight away people go, oh my God, thank you, it's not us, you know? And then I remind them, like, how about, and I say this to everybody who's going into a new relationship, you guys out there, whenever you go into your next relationship, sit down with your partner and make an agreement that whatever comes up, it's you as a team against the problem and not you against each other. Even though your nervous system may make it feel that way, that's not necessarily the truth. The truth of it can be, it's us together against an issue. And that's, what's the word, liberating from this human program that says there's something wrong with me and not everyone else. Whereas to acknowledge, this is a part of the human condition that we have to navigate.
So how about if
so it's
two
like,
people...
I'm really trying to say...
Sorry. You go.
Yeah, I'm just really trying to remind people that what it is that they're experiencing is normal. Conflict's normal. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. All of these programs that we have, there's one of my favorite authors I read years ago, and in their book they wrote, there's not the sensation, thought, feeling or emotion that's not valid if you're having it, and there's no such thing as an adult. And the second one really made me laugh. And it's true, like inside were this melting pot of different personas and beings that evolved at different points in our life to keep us safe. And they're the ones that are in the subconscious still driving our vehicle of life. And at various points when they feel unsafe, they're going to try and take over. And it's just about trying to gently, in little baby steps, reprogram that so that we, the adult in this present moment, are in charge. And also those little creatures from our past that did their best in those moments to keep us safe, because that's what they were trying to do when they arose. These personas know that they're welcome, and they know that they're safe. So it's really, really, really all about safety. It always comes back to that thing. Safety, safety, safety.
100%. So what happens when two people or more come into a situation, they have evenly matched nervous systems? Who becomes the influencer out of those individuals? Or does it just become a creative exchange?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, who's the most skilled in going into battle is going to be one of the things. If you get two similar people, so if you get two people that, you know, these things they call attachment styles, there's something they call avoidance, so people that don't want to come into conflict.
I know
so that's just
about that, Cyrus. Nothing.
So that's really just two people who learn that the safest way for them is to run away. That's the flight response. And if you get two people that have learned that fighting is the safest way, then you're going to have fireworks in your relationship. And just to say that even though we believe the purpose of getting into relationships on the human level is about to find our soul partner or whatever, to have children, that actually karmically, the reason that we amazingly choose these people is to bring up our traumas and our triggers from our past for those to be resolved. So you actually, on some level, want to thank your partner when they trigger you. And what we're going to do in little bite-sized chunks is offer you practices that you can use in a game kind of way with your partner to start to reprogram your response so that you have spaciousness. So I just want to say one thing. It's super important to mention that when we're in conflict with those we love, it's not, even though it seems like it's the contents we're arguing over, and that may be the case, the actual important part is the container. And the container that's important, that in our subconscious is what we're seeking is, am I safe? And that can be, does this person have space to listen to me? Do they see me? Do they hear me? Do they appreciate me? And for all of that, do they still love me? And that's actually what's going on. So if you and I were in conflict, Nicole, which is never going to happen, the first thing I'd say to you if you were coming at me triggered was, if whatever it was you were saying, I'm like, oh, bless, I get that. Is there more? Boom, let you speak. Oh, yeah, really, I feel you. Is there more? And all I'm really doing in there is allowing you to express so that this build up of energy that's built up to your trigger moment can dissipate so that Nicole, the being that's full of love and compassion and light that I know, can come back online and that we can communicate in that level. So it's these simple practices of just recognizing when my partner's shouting at me, she's not really shouting at me for what she's shouting at me about. She's just feeling unsafe and trying to protect herself. And if I can just allow her space to express, knowing that she doesn't mean it and that both of us want to come back to love, if I can offer her that superpower in that moment of just listening and saying, I get it, is there more? I get it, is there more? Eventually, she or you will come back online and we can start to relate in a way where we're both conscious of what's going on.
Yeah, beautiful. I hope everyone in the States with family members and friends that have different political views and opinions are really taking this on board and understanding. And what you're speaking to is something I so often see in my own facilitation when I'm working with people. And I've noticed this, similarity when people can't hold that space, because what you're speaking to is the capacity to hold space for someone else to soften, to be seen, to be heard. And what I've seen so often is how someone's pain and their own suffering and their own feelings of not feeling seen or validated or acknowledged are then getting in the way of being able to hold that space for someone else. So I think that would be a powerful last point of conversation to close with. What do you do if fundamentally that's where you're at in your journey? You feel such an immense need to be the one that's seen, to have that significance because you've felt overridden or whatever it is in your past. What's a self-responsibility practice you can do?
It's such an easy thing to navigate. And I just want to speak up on behalf of the bit that's inside each of us, is this inner accountant. And the inner accountant wants equality for us. So if we have a structure, this is a beautiful thing for you to do out there, guys, if you're in your relationships, to do this on a daily basis, to have what I call a check-in. And a check-in is a space where we're going to develop this lost art, this thing, I've heard about it, and it's called listening. And so in a check-in process, firstly, I'm going to speak about this inner accountant. The inner accountant is making sure that we get our space and we get our time. And so in acknowledgement of that being a part of this human condition, I offer this process, which is just this process called a simple check-in, where one person gets to speak and then the other person listens, knowing that at the end of this part of the process, the tables are going to be turned, the roles are going to be swapped, and you get your chance to speak and the other person gets their chance to listen. So that straight away says, okay, you know what? I can relax now because I know I'm going to get my time and space. And then a check-in is just a process whereby let's set the timer on the iPhone so the inner accountant can see we get exactly the same amount of seconds each. And let's say we're going to do 3 minutes in the morning. So I get to share 3 minutes in the morning about my experience. And at the end of that 3 minutes, when the timer goes off, I finish up my sentence. And then you, as my partner who's listening to me, proves to me that you were listening by, you get half the time. So if it's 3 minutes, 1.5 minutes, spending 1.5 minutes reflecting back what you heard, trying your best to use as many of the same words as possible, not your interpretation. And then after that, if I heard anything that you said wrong or that you missed anything important, I get another minute just to clarify or add. And then at the end of that minute, it's your turn now as the listener to, the first time you were reflecting back what you heard. Now the second time, for the second 1.5 minutes, you get to share the impact of how it felt to hear your partner sharing. And that's not to do with your opinion or how to fix it, but simply, when I heard you sharing, I noticed my heart was tense or my breath was tense, or I felt this amazing amount of compassion for you. And then at the end of that period, the person who initially shared gets another 1.5 minutes to share how it felt to share and then be reflected and then be heard. And then you stop, take a minute or two just to be with that. And then the other person, we swap roles and the other person gets their chance. So that eventually what it does is it deprograms this belief that I need to be thinking and trying to get my space here because you know you're going to get it. And then what it also does is it starts to build this quality of being able to really be present in listening to your partner. And that's a beautiful relationship. You can have two people that are aware enough to be able to listen to each other and have space for each other. Because the way we grow is not really by somebody else telling us what to do. It's by listening to ourselves and working it out for ourselves. So this is a really beautiful process where instead of having those loops going around in your head, you're giving your partner an insight into where you're at. You're receiving their insight. You're being seen, heard, understood, respected, and have space. And those things are just like in little relationships, in personal relationships, those things are gold dust, kind of these practices and structures to implement to change the way that we relate to each other.
Powerful, simple practices. And I really challenge, we're going to obviously add you into the WhatsApp group so you get to offer those resources, but challenge everyone watching this to maybe even have a think about who in your life do you really meet the edges with that you actually deep down really care about, family member, friends, and how can you implement some of these practices and be the leader that actually steps forward and says, hey, can I try this process with you? I'm wanting us to have more unity and unification and harmony in our relationships. I think that's invaluable. Thank you so much, Cyrus.
So just to everyone out there, Nicole talked about a WhatsApp group. If you find me and my number on there, and then just send me a personal message with GUS, Global Unity Summit, your name and your location, your country, I'll add you to a group that you can't respond into, but I'm going to post all of these resources for you so you can take these away and play little games in your relationship and put these structures in place to help you move away from any conflict that you might be experiencing that you don't want to, into this kind of harmonious, loving, spacious, playful connection with your friends, your family, your loved ones, even your colleagues.
Thank you, Cyrus. You're an absolute gem. Much appreciated. I've just reposted the link to jump into that WhatsApp group, and Vic and I are going to add you in there now as well, so you're all connected.
Thank you.
And we'll share your socials as well. That's another way that people can connect with you. So we'll make sure to do that.
Great. Nicole, I'm super grateful for you putting the time and effort in to create this. Thank you for shaping our world in the way that we all want to live in it.
Yeah, you're so welcome, brother. Much love. Enjoy Bali.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.